Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So, yes, finally we're about to start. I once again thank all of you for your patience, for bearing with us. I think this is the very first time that India Sea Trade has delayed the commencement of an event for so long. So we've been waiting for our guests, and most of them are here, but yes, some of them are still on the way, but we're anyway getting started. Namaste, Gandhidham. The resounding success of the previous editions of the Multimodal Logistics Summit held in Gandhidham in last February has placed a greater responsibility on India's sea trade to match the expectations of the industry in forthcoming editions. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Deepa Ishwar, and on behalf of India Sea Trade, I welcome each and every one of you, our esteemed speakers, sponsors, and participants for the 7th edition of the Multimodal Logistics Summit organized by Sea Trade Knowledge Network with the theme Multimodal Logistics, the next opportunity for India. Shall we begin with a loud round of applause for each and every one of you who's here and for India's Sea Trade for making this happen. This premier flagship event is presented by MPRS Shipping and Logistics Private Limited, powered by Matchlog Solutions Private Limited, in association with Win-Win Maritime Limited, co-presented by Indian Oil Corporation, co-powered by PSA India, hosted by Win Asia Maritime Private Limited. Ladies and gentlemen, India's Sea Trade has been working closely with the ship owners, ship operators, ports, logistics players, end users, consultancies, and the government since 2012 in bringing together all parties onto a single platform like this to discuss, deliberate, debate, and address the issues pertaining to multimodal logistics. Till date, India's Sea Trade has organized 6 insightful and highly successful events that have brought out numerous solutions to address various issues in this domain. The recommendations made by trade and end users were brought to the notice of the Ministry of Shipping, Ministry of Commerce, Ministry of Railways, and state maritime boards after every event. We pride ourselves in delivering not only knowledge-based events, not just for their content excellence and presentation, but also for their potential to truly serve by keeping the stakeholders, users, and the community in their target sectors informed and connected. From industry-specific events to innovative business platforms, we have been associated with some of the best events in the country and have built a reputation of bringing to table the best business deliberations, knowledge sharing, and outcomes that have engaged and assisted enhanced collaboration amongst the government, industry, and trade. India's logistics sector is currently undergoing a significant transformation, driven by a combination of infrastructure development and policy reforms. However, despite these efforts, the country still faces high logistics cost, which amounts to nearly 14% of GDP compared to 8 to 10% in some of the developed nations. This inefficiency is largely due to inadequate intermodal and multimodal transportation systems, reliance on road transport, and insufficient infrastructure for storage and handling. To address these challenges, my dear guests, and to position India as a global logistics leader, the government has introduced various initiatives such as National Infrastructure Pipeline, PM Gati Shakti Master Plan, Logistics Efficiency Enhancements Program, National Logistic Policy, and the development of industrial corridors. These programs aim to reduce logistics cost, improve multimodal connectivity, and enhance the overall efficiency of the transportation ecosystem. As we commence this memorable and insightful conference today, India's Sea Trade is immensely grateful to all our sponsors and supporters and well-wishers. May I call out their names? We would like to thank MPRS Logistics, Matchlog, Win-Win Maritime, Indian Oil Corporation, PSA India, Win Asia Maritime, Vansh Logistics, Dene Logistics, Navdeep Shipping, Chakyat Agencies, Pushpak, Globus, Transitors, Total Transport, Fast Track CFS, Jodak Shipping, Deen Dayal Port, Landmark CFS, Navio Shipping, Hub and Links, Adani Port, Comsail Shipping, Thar Dry Port. We would also like to thank Kamal Enterprises, Shri Ashapura Group, Goodwill Intermodal, DNM Marine, Seven Seas Global Express, Mustang, Shabri Container, Central Warehousing Corp, Tata Blue Scope Steel Private Limited, and Vazron. Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it for our lovely, gracious sponsors, without whose help this event would never have been possible. Now, we have with us someone who during his distinguished career served as Secretary to the Government of India in the Ministry of Shipping and as Secretary in the Ministry of Overseas Indian Affairs. With extensive experience in finance, industry and commerce, education, urban development, and general administration, he has made significant contributions. Additionally, he held the position of Principal Secretary Industries with the Kerala government. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my proud pleasure to invite our chairman, Mr. K. Mohandas, a 1974 batch IAS officer of the Kerala cadre and former Secretary of the Ministry of Ports, Shipping and Waterways, Government of India, to kindly come up on stage and welcome the audience here. Over to you. Mr. K. Mohandas on stage, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, sir.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this, the 7th edition of the Multimodal Logistics Meet. It's great to see the many of the participants here who were here earlier, during the earlier meetings, and a hearty welcome to all those who are attending for the first time. This meeting is, the summit is important for various reasons. I don't want to go into the details, but it has been possible for the summit to facilitate the outflow of opinions from experienced people in the industry and from people in startup companies and organizations, and then, prepare a sort of wish list of the various players involved in the segments and present it to government so that something is done, and that something has been happening over the years. It's great to see that the various ministries in the Government of India, whether it is shipping, of course, it used to be called shipping in my days, but it's ports, shipping and waterways now. So that ministry, the Ministry of Commerce with the logistics division, a separate division of logistics, and the Niti Aayog and various other agencies involved. They are all taking this, the development of this sector very seriously, and lots of things are happening. I don't want to go into the list of achievements that all of us have had because of government's initiatives and the new policies that have been introduced. Today we have primarily 3 sessions. The first on infrastructure and related things, second on the use of technology, and third on the strategic vision. I would say all these are very important, and in all these there are innovative things that need to be done, and maybe it may be necessary to speed up the progress in many of the things that are currently being done. Infrastructure, of course, all of us know the developments, but when you look at domestic infrastructure, the prime players are the railways and the highways authorities. And the railway and the general feeling is that the road sector has been developing faster than the railways. which is not supposed to be the best way of development if we are looking at the environmental concerns. The policy papers would all say that we must move from land to water, of course, and on land from the highways to the railways. But then the development of railways probably has to keep pace with the development that's happening in the road sector. But then the PM Gati Shakti and all, the identification of the gaps in infrastructure, the identification of the connectivity that is required for the multimodal logistics to work better, these processes are definitely happening much better than in the past. And facilitating all this is technology. Because technology is something which will govern us in the future. And the last, of course, the last session, we will discuss the various options that are available and the course that should be adopted as part of a strategic vision for the development of these sectors. In fact, when we discuss about logistics, it's not really an Indian thing because now logistics is global. The discussion has to be global. Even Indian initiatives, for example, the IMEC, which came out of the G20 summit in Delhi last year. That's a very, very important development as far as India is concerned. But then we know that the global issues have affected the performance of certain things in the Middle East sector of IMEC. That's something which is beyond our control, of course. We can't do much about the problems that are happening, the geopolitical issues in the Middle East. That's a reality. But now, when we look at the broader things that are happening in the world, perhaps the biggest thing that has happened, which will have an impact on the whole world, is the American presidential election. Trump, of course, is not new. We have seen Trump in action, and he's coming back. We don't know if he's coming back with a vengeance, because his slogan has been "Make America Great Again." Last time also, and this time the slogan is repeated, and this impact of MAGA will be that there will be an effort to maybe it's a sort of to ensure that all those the liberal policies are all stopped, to ensure that the US stands out as a controller of everything in this world, everything in this universe, and these will be the efforts. So liberalization, globalization, and all that will probably be forgotten slogans under Trump. You don't know, we'll have to watch. And if you look at our direct interest of how India is going to be affected, I don't know, there are many, many postulates. I don't subscribe to any particular thing. But last time Trump came to power as president, we all know that the Indian rupee and the Chinese yuan also collapsed. You can't say collapsed, but they went down. The rates went down substantially. Exporters may probably feel happy initially that you get more rupees. But then the question of tariffs is a major issue. If a protective American government introduces tariffs which apply to India and China, of course, China will be worse affected, no doubt on that. But then we could also be affected. That's one part of it. And now, if it is America like this, China, of course, we know what's happening in China. China has been the factory for the world. They still are. Everybody wants to boycott China. But then even those boycott China t-shirts are made in China only. So there is no way you can stop China because they have established they had the heads, they came in the 90s and in the early years of this millennium, they have established themselves as the manufacturers of everything that the world requires, whether it is basic elementary things like mementos and all that, or advanced technological things. So China's domination is very much there, but then I don't know. In fact, last time we discussed here, there was this postulate that India would be a beneficiary if global multinational industries move out of China. Maybe some things are probably happening, but nothing much visible has happened. But it has to happen. And whether industries move out of China to India or not, India will have to initiate efforts to get in more of manufacturing activity, so that this Make in India, the idea also makes sense. So the big players, US and China, are like this. Then of course the economies bigger than India are Germany and Japan, both facing political instability, and political instability naturally has its effect on the economies of those countries. India, of course, GDP-wise, India is number 5 on. At the same time, we also have the big countries like Russia and Britain. Russia, of course, the main thing that's happening is the Ukraine war. And while in America, the government wants to improve efficiency of everything, make everything smart, Trump has now designated even Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy to head this Department of Government Efficiency. And obviously they are people who are capable of coming with innovative ideas. Let us expect Elon Musk and even Vivek Ramaswamy. Is a novice, but his parental roots are in Kerala, so be careful about him. So he is also capable of bringing in innovative ideas and implement those ideas, because Donald Trump is capable of implementing whatever things which might prima facie probably appear crazy, but maybe if they think it's to the benefit of the American people and to the American country, they will do it. Russia, of course, is thinking differently. The new ministry that's going to come up in Russia is called the Ministry of Sex, because Putin wants more people to be produced in that country. So that's happening. Well, the global scenario is all like this, and I would say this is very, very relevant for us, because logistics is not a standalone activity. Logistics depends on what we move within this country and out of this country and into this country. So if we are looking at export, import, and domestic movement, and that is logistics, and that logistics is dependent on the various economic factors, the way trade is developing, the way trade is orienting itself. So these are all very, very important. And we expect lots of things to sort of churn out in the coming days. The Middle East, for example, I mentioned this. We don't know how long this Israel-Hamas conflict will last. But as long as it lasts, maybe we will be very, very badly affected. There are companies which benefit out of this. There are companies which benefit out of the terrorism in the Red Sea or in the nearby areas. But at the same time, the economy suffers. Economies of several countries, several people suffer as a result of this thing. So what I was trying to say is that there are lots of factors which are happening around us, which will have a big impact on whatever we are doing. And so our strategy should be to look at whatever is happening. How do we adapt ourselves to the various challenges that are there? How do we make use of the opportunities that come up? And how do we sort of get over the obstacles that would come up in our way? India is capable of that. The government is capable of that. The Indian industry is resilient enough, flexible enough to do that. And we definitely have the support of technology, or we should harness technology to the extent possible to make sure that, in everything, the use of technology should be able to leapfrog us into the forefront. It is definitely possible. So friends, I would not like to take a longer time at this initial session. I'm very, very happy to welcome all of you to this summit, and I hope that the summit will come out with some useful ideas which will benefit everybody. I hope that this will facilitate the interactions between various players in various segments of the logistic industry, so that there could be sort of some sort of common things that come out for mutual benefit. So that way overall benefits are expected, and let's hope for the best and wish you all the best. And I hope to see very, very fruitful deliberations during the next few hours. Welcome again, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you very much for bringing that global perspective to today's discussions. Yes, we should be reminded of the fact that we are having these discussions amidst a major political, worldly political change that's happening. So let's hope to bring that perspective in today's discussions. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to MPRS Shipping and Logistics Private Limited Presents 7th edition of the Multimodal Logistics Summit, powered by Matchlog Solutions Private Limited in association with Win-Win Maritime Limited, co-presented by Indian Oil Corporation, co-powered by PSA India, hosted by Win Asia Maritime Private Limited. Let's get started with session 1. I know you're all waiting to hear from the leaders. So let's get started. The first session focuses on infrastructure development and multimodal connectivity. The session will center on the current landscape of infrastructure across India's transportation network, emphasizing the integration of rail, road, air, and port systems to establish a seamless multimodal logistics framework. The discussion will provide a comprehensive overview of the advancements and challenges within each mode of transport, highlighting how their synchronization is crucial to improving supply chain efficiency and reducing overall logistics cost. To discuss and debate on this topic, I would like to invite our dignitaries on stage. Please get ready to give them a loud round of applause as I call out their names. Mr. Umesh Grover, Secretary General, Container Freight Station Association of India. Mr. Grover is a marine engineer with over 52 years of experience and has the unique distinction of having the most diversified experience spreading in practically all the segments of shipping, ports, and maritime logistics. In addition to his current position of CFSAI, he is also the strategic advisor to All Cargo Logistics and Karanja Ports and Terminals. Ladies and gentlemen, a loud round of applause for Mr. Umesh Grover, who's joined us today. Welcome, sir. Let's welcome our next guest for today. Mr. Sunil Bakshi, Associate Director, PSA India. With over 25 years of comprehensive experience across key logistics sectors, Mr. Bakshi has successfully led commercial and P&L functions at industry leaders including AP, Moller Maersk, DHL and Adani Groups. He is spearheading intermodal and terminal services at PSA India, driving growth and operational excellence. Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it from Mr. Sunil Bakshi, Associate Director, PSA India. Welcome, sir. Kindly join the panel. Let's welcome our next panelist on stage, Mr. Ranadeep Banerjee, AGM BP Infra, Tata BlueScope Steel Private Limited. Mr. Banerjee brings 25 years of experience in sales and business development in industrial and value-added steel. He has ascribed with many a first in his stint with Larsen & Toubro Limited, both in India and in the SAARC region. Currently heading Western region for Infra B2B business arm, including solar and sectoral business obligation on pan-India basis for Tata BlueScope Steel. Ladies and gentlemen, it's an absolute pleasure having him with us. A loud round of applause for Mr. Banerjee. Welcome, sir. Let's hear it for Mr. Gyan Abhishek, Head, Intermodal Operations, South Asia, Maersk Line India Private Limited. Mr. Gyan Abhishek is a seasoned supply chain expert with over a decade of experience in diverse areas like customer experience, multimodal operations, equipment management, and ocean depot operations. His significant contributions include cross-border rail freight operations with Nepal, solar imports, dedicated block trains, and innovative inland waterway transportation solutions. Ladies and gentlemen, we look forward to hearing from him, Mr. Gyan Abhishek. Welcome, sir. Over to Mr. Naveen Chowdhury, Executive Vice President Operations, the Thar Dry Port. Mr. Chowdhury has 4 decades of experience in logistics, sales and distribution, and commercial functions, having held leadership roles across global and the Indian chemical companies. He has been working at Thar Dry Port almost a decade as head of operations. Prior to this, he had stints in Indo-Rama Thailand and GHCL Limited. Ladies and gentlemen, a loud round of applause for Mr. Naveen Chowdhury. Welcome, sir. And now, I'd like to invite Dr. Hariharan Boddepalli, Deputy General Manager, Navio Shipping Private Limited. Ladies and gentlemen, at Navio Shipping, Dr. Hariharan Boddepalli is responsible for driving growth, operational efficiency, and market expansion in the logistics and shipping industry. With over a decade of experience, he has held roles emphasizing P&L management, fleet optimization, and category management. Dr. Boddepalli prioritizes sustainable logistics solutions and innovative strategies to address evolving client needs and industry advancements. He is an appropriate person to join us on the panel today. Let's welcome him with a loud round of applause. Welcome, sir. And now, over to our moderator for the first session. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Mr. P. Manoj, Editor, Shipping ET Infra, here today to moderate the first session and to set the tone of discussions. Mr. Manoj is a journalist with ET Infra, which is a digital vertical from the Economic Times, with more than 3 decades spent in various publications, including Mint and the Hindu Business Line. Manoj tracks the maritime sector from policy, regulatory, and corporate perspectives. So we have a journalist on the panel today to moderate the discussion. Handing over the floor to you, Mr. Manoj, and welcome to the panel. Ladies and gentlemen, so here's your chance to discuss and deliberate with industry experts. Do not forget that we have placed standing mics at regular intervals among you. If you have a question, please go up to the mic and ask your question when the Q&A session begins. Over to you, Mr. Manoj.
Thank you. Hello. Okay. Sudhir, thank you so much for putting together a great set of people to discuss this very important point about infrastructure and multimodal connectivity. Thank you so much. And Mr. Mohandas, thank you for setting the stage for this event with your great insight and perspectives. Let me start, I must confess that I've never seen this kind of a frenzied activity on logistics ever in my career. For the last 10 years, the government has been putting so much of emphasis on logistics, how to improve efficiency, productivity, all with an eye on improving India's competitiveness on the global stage. Okay. Having said that, I mean, a lot of investments have been happening both on the sea side as well as on the land side. And, but over the last 4 or 5 years, especially after the COVID pandemic, I mean, these, infrastructure and logistics and supply chain have been really tested, because of, the supply chain snarls and, what has happened during this period. I mean, first it was, of course, pandemic, and then after that, we have seen now, the Red Sea crisis, and then, the geopolitical tensions in the Middle East and all that, really testing India's supply chain. So the point now is whether India's infrastructure and multimodal connectivity is really geared up to meet those supply chain, stress that keeps happening, in the sense that, all those things are going to be here for quite some time now. I mean, there is no solution on the horizon. So we have to live with it, I think, for quite some time. So where do we go from here? I mean, how is India's infrastructure placed? And how do we meet or work around those challenges? To discuss this, I would like to bring Mr. Umesh Grover in, to ask him about where do we stand in terms of infrastructure, and are they sufficient enough to withstand and deal with many of the things that we are going to face for quite some time now?
Thank you, Manoj. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, rather. I'm so happy to see Mr. Mohandas. I've had the pleasure of working with him very closely. I was a director in SCI, and after that I was with Pipavav Defense, and he was Secretary Shipping. So, and I've been also associated with Sudhir's India Sea Trade. Thanks, Manoj, a very relevant question. Let us look at our infrastructure today. Where are we? Let's not compare ourselves with China or any other country. We are the fastest growing nation. Recently, in one of the conferences, somebody from Norway, or was it from Belgium, he said they used to come and they used to advertise here that come, fly to Belgium, great country to see. He says now globally we are preaching fly to India, a great country to see. What a heart. It was from, I think, one of the Consul Generals of Norway, if I'm not wrong, very, very recently. But let's not be complacent. Let us see what we have, what we need, and what is the gap. As we stand today, as you know, India has got 12 major ports, 200, don't call them minor ports, because Adani port is much bigger than any other port in India. 200 ports, out of which 100, 120 are operational. You have 65.7 lakh kilometers of road network. You have 1.02 lakh train network, rail network available. You have 131 operating airports in the country. You have 128 ICDs, 169 CFSs, 1,200 railway sheds, which are operational, some 300 million cubic feet space for the warehousing. We have, I think, everything. Infrastructure is growing and it's there. We employ almost 55 million, 22 million people are employed in this industry, in the logistics industry. We are at $383 billion 2 years back. We expect it to be $580 billion by 2026. So growth has to be phenomenal, and infrastructure also has to be phenomenal. Now, when we talk about 12 major ports and compare this with China, we use, our annual throughput is about 19 million TEUs, 20 million TEUs. 23 million. That's including empties. So about 19 million actual. And China, one port does 40 million. They have already crossed 294 million this year, in these last 8-10 months. But let's not compare, like I said. We are growing, and we are growing at a rapid pace. There's an infrastructure which is available. There's a lot of infrastructure which is underutilized, And that needs to be suitably utilized by tweaking the policy. Now, as for the first time, the National Logistics Policy was released by the Honorable Prime Minister on 17th of September 2022. And it has seen a sea change. Gati Shakti was another drastic step where, what is Gati Shakti? It's a platform, but it gives visibility to every stakeholder. And it's 16 ministries which were working silos are all together now. Take an example. The telecom industry will dig roads. They have no idea that new roads are coming. The new roads will be dug. Then somebody else will come and work on that because there's no visibility. Now this is like more like a Google map, this is your Gati Shakti. You can pin down, okay, I need warehouses. What are the warehouses? So you'll pin down warehouses all over India and it'll help you plan where you want to set up your plant. Where there are airports, what are the connectivity? Everything, it's a phenomenal platform introduced. It's at a nascent stage, but it's moving fast. So there are a lot of positives which is happening. Let's look at our rail and road ratio. You know, if you take our cargo which was carried in, say, 2 years back, 3 trillion kilometers, kilometer miles was by road and only 0.8 trillion by rail. That means almost 1/3. But the good part is, after the dedicated freight corridor has come, the ratio from 19%, the rail share has gone up to 31-32%. It's really screwed because it was 65 to 70% road. And as you know, road is the most polluting. It's, you know, if you take your carbon footprints, road will have 108 or 109 and railway will have 11. And coastal shipping will have also 11. That's the sort of savings in the carbon footprints with these. Now, how has it worked? Let's take the case of Mundra itself. Double stack trains have come. We still have trains of 750 meters. We are all going to 1500 meters. So it will be double the size. Instead of 90 rakes, 180. Double stack, 360. We are doing 30 kilometers an hour average because 60, 70, 80 passenger trains run on the same track. Now you got a separate dedicated corridor, you will get an average speed of 50, 60. So there's a multiplier effect of 8 times. And slowly railway is coming up, which is a very, very good sign. See, up to 200, 300 kilometers, road is the right mode to transport because it may be more expensive probably. Of course, if you have the rail network, why not? But probably, rail beyond 300 kilometers is absolutely necessary. So just to start, I'll give you this one, then you can come back to me. I don't want to take away time of my other.
Right. Let me bring Mr. Sunil Bakshi into the discussion. You know, PSA, he represents PSA, which is one of the world's top container terminal operators. So it not only runs container terminals, but also runs container freight stations at strategic locations. Do you think India needs more container handling hubs in the hinterland to facilitate efficient movement and reduce logistics costs? Because given the fact that India's exporters often face equipment shortages and, how can import containers be, quickly turned around to facilitate exports?
Okay, so that's 2 questions.
Yeah.
So I'll answer the first one. And before I go to your question, I think I'll give, for those of you who will not know PSA or are not very familiar, so we are a global terminal operator based out of Singapore, which is our flagship operations, where we handle 40 million TEUs annually. And globally, we are handling upwards of 90 million TEUs across 60 terminals that we have globally. Now, out of those 60, there's quite a few which are inland. Most are actually deep sea terminals, but then there is quite a few which is inland and rail terminals. So PSA is very, very bullish on rail as a mode of transport. And why? Because as a terminal operator, we believe that terminals that have rail, on-dock rail, actually are much more efficient. And the reason for that is because rail offers you that mass evacuation capability. Yeah, so in one move, you can actually move hundreds of boxes. Mr. Umesh alluded that you can actually, let's say, theoretically, going forward, once DFC is commissioned, you can actually move 360 TUs in one train, which is phenomenal. Coastal also gives you that capability of mass evacuation, but rail is much more pervasive. So rail is very important from a terminal operations perspective. You create these huge capacities with big capex, so you want them to operate very efficiently. So rail comes in very handy. And like he said, anything upwards of 300 kilometers, rail is the go-to medium. You will find differences in pricing of rail and viability of rail across countries, but then this 300 kilometers, I think, is a good enough, let's say, rule of thumb. The third thing, of course, is sustainability. He's already mentioned about, my number is a little different in terms of, let's say, carbon footprint, but then it's still a very, let's say, big saving in terms of carbon footprint. So for these reasons, rail rail terminals is what PSA is very keen on. Talking of India, I think Umeshji mentioned about the number of ICDs that we have in India. And I think our view is that India already has done a phenomenal job of creating this inland network, which I think is world-class and at par with the best of the, let's say, global economies. And thanks to the stellar work done by Concor over decades, and then private operators have come in the last 1.5 decades, and they've also done very good work, and the market is much more competitive now. But we believe that there is room for more. To your question, whether we want more inland nodes, so the answer from our side is yes, and I'll explain the reasons. Like we said, we are creating, and I'll go back to Mr. Mohandas's this thing, that India is actually sitting at a cusp of a big opportunity. We have been talking about it for the last 3, 4, 5 years. We have seen some green shoots, but I think this is that concept of that we see the immediate change looks small, but then the long-term change, I think, will have much more momentum. So India is going to become, let's say, even if, let's say, Mr. Trump does half of what he's talking, I think India will be a major beneficiary. And we need to prepare for this, because if you are caught off guard, that okay, tomorrow demand is coming, multinationals want to set up their factories in India for exporting, and then you are found wanting on infrastructure, then I think that's the last thing that we want. So we are already building these huge capacities on the port side. We ourselves alone are building phase 2 in JNPA. That's roughly 2.4 million TEUs capacity. We will be 5 million TEU capacity, single largest terminal with on-dock rail, which is already DFC compliant. We have these 1500 meter sidings that you were talking about. So we are the only terminal that can actually handle. So we are preparing ahead for the future. But then this terminal capacity also needs to be backed by hinterland capacity. So you can't have cargo coming from hinterland by road. You won't be competitive. So even if, let's say, customers tomorrow want to buy more from India, but they will also look for a competitive price. And if you are priced out, then you've lost this opportunity again. So rail, building more rail-linked ICDs, I think is pretty much something that we should be doing as of yesterday. DFC is another big opportunity. I think we already have a network of rail-linked ICDs, but DFC is an opportunity for network reconfiguration, is what I will call it. Because what happens is you are building DFC, but then most of your existing ICDs are slightly away from DFC. There are a few which would be on DFC, but not everything. So, and operators, of course, are figuring out ways and means of connecting those ICDs to DFC. In some cases, we are successful, but not in all cases. And then there is this hub and spoke model also, which is good innovation. But if you can build an ICD or a network of ICDs on DFC, that I think would be the icing on the cake. That is what will actually get you an ROI on your DFC investment, which is already a big investment by the government. So you need to, and government needs to encourage. Today, one policy takeaway that we can have from this is that in terms of, let's say, ICD policy, it is today a restrictive policy.
Correct.
We have, since 2020, there has been this policy that there is already a proliferation of ICDs and CFSs. So there are restrictions. So I think the policy actually mixes up the two. There has been some proliferation in some markets on the CFS side, but that also I think is regressive. ICDs are not in any ways proliferated. So you want more competition, you want more ICDs to come up. So the government should actually, let's say, liberalize the policy once again and leave it for the industry to...
It should be left to the market forces to decide, basically, isn't it? Rather than the government coming in and saying that, hey, look, you can't set up new ICDs or CFS in some zones and all that, which is already. So it should be.
That is one policy, because see, how it also works is, you say that, okay, you leave some window open, that, okay, in some cases you will give permission. But to get to that stage of permission, you already need to do a lot of work. Acquire land, do some basic railway permissions, etc., etc. And by the time you get there, and if you are uncertain, then you don't want to even take the first step.
Right, right.
So it has to be either a fully open policy or a totally closed policy. Midway doesn't work.
So I heard your point on, this rail versus road. I mean, obviously, rail has got its own advantages, I mean, in terms of environmental, benefits and all that. My question to Mr. Naveen Chowdhury is, you run an ICD in Tar ICD. Now, if you look at the trend, recent trend, I mean, it shows that the rail coefficient of cargo in the first half of this year at least has come down in the major container ports of, let's say, Mundra, Pipavav, Jain Port and all that. Why do you think it's happening? Is it a one-off kind of situation? What needs to be done so that, more cargo and more containers move by rail? And we have, for instance, DFC has been set up except for the last mile or last stretch of Jain Port. By and large, it is connected. It's fully connected to Mundra and fully connected to Pipavav. So why is it there is a reluctance on the part of, EXIM trade to move containers by rail and they're preferring road? What is the issue out here? How do you improve that?
Good afternoon. It's a privilege to be a part of this summit. Let me get straight to the point. I think the most compelling reason for rail coefficient going down is that in India we continue to subsidize passenger freight by commercial freight. Now you see your passenger rates are very low, so the government needs money, so it's like a burden which it recovers from the rail, whether it be container train operators or whether it be some other operator. So point number one, if you are going to cross-subsidize passenger fare by commercial rates, your rates are going to be heavy, and that naturally will mean that people will go to road. That's point number one. Point number two is we have ad hoc increase of railway fares. For example, a few months back, a year back, we had something called BSS, busy season surcharge. Now, busy season surcharge means that the government lays a levy on something which actually puts strenuous or strains your system. But in this case, BSS was supposed to be put for a few months. Now it has been made permanent. So now it's actually a part of the rail haulage. So, if you have ad hoc increases in railway fare, it becomes very difficult for rail to compete with road. I mean, there is no reason that this is not going to be one-off. It may keep on increasing if certain policies of such nature which keep on increasing your railway freight. Number three, if you see the rail haulage system as such, it's the heavy cargo which actually, you discourage heavy cargo. You have a graded system. 10 tons, 16 tons, 20 tons, 26 tons. So what you're saying is the heavy cargo will be charged more, the light cargo will be charged less. For example, it's like a taxi, You sit in a taxi and somebody is weighing 100 kgs, somebody is weighing 50 kgs, somebody is weighing 70 kgs. You don't tell the obese man, कि नहीं sir, आपका पैसा तो ज़्यादा लगेगा क्योंकि आपका वजन बहुत ज़्यादा है. No. I don't think this is the way you have to do it. I think the railways need to overhaul the system so that you are able to bring in light cargo, you are able to bring in heavy cargo. I think the idea or the move forward would be to have a train weight. Look, my car can take 500 kilos. You take anybody, of any weight, any dimension. I think the rakes should have similar, so that you have a flat fare which has both heavy cargo and then the light cargo, and you make a rake, so at least you will be able to pull some heavy cargo which actually is now going by road. So you see, there's another reason for the road coefficient to keep on increasing. So these are some compelling reasons why this is not a one-off case. It could probably go on reducing the rail coefficient at the expense of road. Then you also have, in container movements, we run 2 ICDs, full-fledged ICDs, one at Sanand, one at Jodhpur, which has become operational now. We have another one coming up in Jaipur. We do about 160,000 TEUs. What we find is the last mile and the first mile connectivity makes it adds to the cost. It's like, instead of a door-to-door delivery, for example, Ahmedabad to Mundra, the truck wala just goes to your factory, picks up the cargo and comes to Mundra. There is no dropping off, dropping on. These are all additional costs. I think we need to find out how we can improve multimodal. Multimodal means using one or more ways of transport, either rail or road. Make it such that you reduce cost and bring about. So cost as such is one factor which pushes cargo to road. Number 2 is service. For example, you see a passenger train. Now it runs from Ahmedabad to Delhi. It has a fixed time, 9 o'clock morning. It reaches Delhi at maybe next day morning. In container traffic, there is nobody who can predict when the rake is actually going to reach the port. Here engine nahi hai, ye nahi hai, this got stabling, this route was congested, the port was congested. See, the customer is not ready to listen to all these excuses कि क्या हुआ उसका डब्बा पहुंचने चाहिए टाइम पे. He wants his dabba to be connected to the vessel. If you don't guarantee that service, naturally you look to the road. He will say, "Arey, come se kam, this guy is actually picking up my cargo and bring it to the port in a certain amount of time." So I think that's another compelling reason why for shorter distances, road takes precedence over rail. There is no doubt about that. Now you come to the infrastructure part of it. See, in India, creating infrastructure is much talked about. But in practice, actually building infrastructure is not easy. The land itself takes the cake. Now, land is such a difficult subject. I can just give you some examples of how difficult it is. We are building an ICD in Jaipur. Now, we have got about 95 acres. Now, there are 2,000 khirji trees. These are the religious trees, Now, unless those trees are cut, you don't have a hope in hell of putting up the terminal. Now, what happens is, the government has given us permission, कि नहीं आप पेड़ काटो sir. अरे भाई, if there is going to be 3-4 people who are going to have public interest litigation filed in court, how the hell can you take those trees out? So this is another problem, that infrastructure on road, you have the highways. Mr. Gadkari is doing such a phenomenal job, building highways at such a terrific speed. But at the same time, if you are going to take so much time to build a terminal, nobody is really going to wait for you. He will say, "Arey yaar, छोड़ो इन लोगों तो 2-2 साल लग जाते हैं terminal बनाने में. अभी road से चलो, let's take the easy way." And I don't disagree with them. If you build terminals in years, and if Mr. Gadkari is building highways at such a rapid pace, naturally there will be a precedence of road over rail.
For instance, even the DFC is not fully completed. This work has been going on for about 10 years now. JNPT last stretch is yet to be connected.
Yep.
So one can imagine when you say that, infrastructure takes a long time.
It does take time.
You've been brutally honest about it.
No, we have to be brutally honest because, the people here have come to see what actually ails the infrastructure industry. I'm speaking from the point of view of an inland container depot. I'll tell you another example of a multimodal problem that we face. I used to work in a company called Gujarat Heavy Chemicals. They have a place called Firozabad. वो आपकी सब चूड़ियाँ वहीं बनती हैं, all the chudiyas. Now we used to take material by rail and then put them in a container, and we found out that damn container couldn't go into the gullies of Firozabad. Now you see the problem. If a container, a 40-foot, 20-foot, cannot go into the local small cities, then what you have to do is that multimodal is broken right away. You have to hire a very big warehouse. You have to put all the boras and all the jumbo bags in the warehouse, take the smaller trucks, bring it back into Firozabad and give it to the chudi wala so that he can produce a chudi and export it out. So you see, these are practical problems which are happening at various levels throughout India. So it is not only building ports, it is not only building rail, it is building the local infrastructure, the local roads, highways which can actually take in these trucks. You have these beautiful trucks, Volvo trucks, but वो फिरोजाबाद में नहीं, अंदर में नहीं जा सकती है. They just have to stand out. So they become like a showpiece, Huh?
Yeah, I know. Gyan, your task is cut out. Being the head of multimodal, being the head of multimodal at Maersk, your task is cut out because of these problems. How do you ensure that cargo moves efficiently from ports to hinterland and back? Given these constraints.
So I have a different view, and I will continue to have a different view. That's what our company also Maersk expects from all of us. So we talked about what we are doing for customers, and why only road for 250 or 300 kilometers or beyond that. So just to give you a few of the examples, we have broken down this myth, and we are running in 150 kilometers also from port to ICD through rail only, and that we run average 3 trains a week. So that's one. Again, if you talk about the infrastructure also, like road versus rail, yes, road is a threat for rail because rail you talk about, it's a carbon footprint, it's better in terms of decarbonization, but then again, end to end, if we talk about, and it's also related with the perception which has been driven by, and customers who are sitting, or the consignees or suppliers who are sitting outside India, those who have a perception, those road is someone who is taking much more ownership in road, and end to end is covered, they will deliver it. It's not necessary. Rail is equally improving. If you talk about someone talked about COVID, so a few years back COVID came, and a lot of things everyone has learned from that. Infrastructure wise, DFC is there. Government also come up with so many programs, policy changes. Gati Sakti, the master plan, where it's like a Facebook. If you have any problem, if you go in if you want to search any of your school friend and you are not able to search it out, you would go and search in Facebook. Similarly, if you want to do something infrastructure, if you don't have any knowledge about it or forte about it, you just go and search in Gati Sakti master plan. You will get a lot of things. DFC is a big boon, although it's not yet completed, roughly 80-85% which is completed, but what we move from north to western ports have seen, last few weeks have seen few of the trains has taken from NCR to port 25 hours, which is like a blessing. Any exporter would expect that his cargo can reach in shortest possible time, and that's what they are giving. Similarly, DFC is also giving multiple nodes to operate it. You can have your smaller ICD out of that. NHAI is coming up with multiple facilities. They are coming up with all the 3P policies where you can go, build, operate. And those are the changes which are happening in our country from last 3-4 years. So if you talk about the customer perception, a recent example, as latest as last week, I had a chance to meet one of our global customers who does, one of the largest retailer globally. And she was quoting that earlier when they used to come to Delhi and they had to go to Muradabad, which is western UP, it used to take 6 to 7 hours. Now it is border to border 2 hours. So that's the change which country is witnessing. That's the change which we have seen in road, which has changed. Smaller lanes still, it takes time to reach there, but the longer ones, like your expressway, the one which is connecting to all the industrial corridors, 11 industrial corridors which are there in India, and it's still progressing and will take time to complete by 27, 28. But these are the things which are happening in our country, a lot of positivities around it. Transit time has come down, which eventually for customer cost also comes down, and they can create an impression over the customers who are sitting out of different countries across the globe, which the position China has maintained 10, 15 years back. So I'm very bullish about the progress which is happening in India, and be it rail or road, everything which is progressing right now.
Good to know that. Good to know that. So, Dr. Hariharan, as a freight forwarder, I mean, what are some of the key infrastructure issues that you face when you are providing logistics services, and how do you plan to address them?
So from a forwarder's point of view, I think so the panel has already mentioned a lot of points. Say, if I talk from a customer-centric point, the biggest challenge in infrastructure is your congestion at ports, okay, the facilities at ports. And the biggest aspect that a forwarder looks at is cost. All these problems are at the end of the day affecting your P&L, right? Your vehicle getting delayed, congestions happening, a fuel cost being added, detention, damages, the dwell time. Say, for example, let's compare a good progressive nation like US or China. Okay, so their dwell time is what, 1 or 2 days? India, it's 6 to 7 days. You look at the cost from 6 to 7 days to 1 or 2 days, how do you compare it? You look at the facilities that we have. You look at the freight time, like sir was just mentioning, Naveen sir mentioned, if I have to transfer, a good cost-effective method is railways, right, for me, but I would prefer roads. Our dependency on railways has reduced drastically. If I look at, say 1950, 40-45% of freight movement was on railways. Today we have dropped down to what, 20-22%? Our dependency on roads have gone up drastically high. Why? Because roads is something that is in your control. For a freight forwarder, you have got these variables which you can control with road logistics. With rail logistics, it's not in your control. You never know. Something might happen, you might not reach the gate in time at all. That's a cost for you. So the basic aspect for forwarders like us or anyone is how efficient can it be to improve all these aspects. Digitalization. If we look at India, yes, digitalization is happening. We have companies like Zepto, Swiggy, Zomato. Now, yesterday, I think so, Zomato has launched a new aspect. You cancelled order, you can get at a discounted price, right? If you look at that industry, an FMCG sector, the way they have grown, right, it is not in our sector. There are big players like Maersk who are giving us tracking, right? But what about others? You don't know where your freight is going to be. You have to keep on calling. The amount of calls that all of us make right now on the platform, everyone knows. How is it? So I think so these are certain factors which, from a forwarder point of view, are value additions which we can get in. Plus, it's a highly competitive market. You look at Freight Federation of India, you would find what, 10, 20,000 people registered, but all of us know there are what, about a lakh, more than a lakh freight forwarders right now.
So basically, I mean, unlike other sectors of the economy where, this digital, systems and digital startups have gained a lot of roots, has that not penetrated much in freight forwarding? Because, and at the end of the day, as you said, physical movement, whatever you say, that is the thing that, metrics that people look at. So Why is it that, an app-based system is not working out to the advantage of the customers?
To answer this question, there are two aspects to it. The first one is the user itself. 90% of the users are more not tech savvy at all in freight forwarding. There are only established players. So like I just mentioned, if we see there are 1 lakh freight forwarders, but only 10,000 are registered on a platform which can help you solve a problem. Now those 10,000 might operate on an app, but the remaining people would definitely operate on a phone call or a WhatsApp. They don't want to use technology. That's point number one. Point number two, they feel the connect is not there to digitalization. They feel over a call it's much more easier to get information than going through a platform, inputting in, trying to track where is it. That is not there. That is what leads to the next second part of what I'm going to answer is skilled labor or skilled people operating it out. People, if, like I mentioned earlier, if you're talking about the other sector where digitalization is high, right, the competitiveness is high. There is support, there is market, there is growth that people see. Over here, people have not yet seen that. That is still restricted only towards the logistical aspects of road, not even rail. Rail is still being digitalized now. So if you see, the dependency is still at places where you can't control them. So if I talk about like digitalization, I think so there should be some push from the government side and all the other players, right? Be it private players, be it foreign companies, to come and take the ownership on how do you push digitalization and help end-to-end networking, to be precise. So we are at a point where your forward integration and backward integration in the supply chain has to be linked together. I think so all of them are in silos at a lot of places. Yes, they have been connected at certain places, but I think so it has to be at a pace in which we are growing. So
I got your point. I'll come back to you because there's. Let me bring Ranadeep into it because he seems to be the odd man out in this panel. How does Tata BlueScope fit into this infrastructure development in supply chain and infrastructure and multimodal connectivity and all that?
Yeah, a very good afternoon to all of you. I have been sitting out over here hearing all my fellow speakers, hearing to some jargons, mind-boggling numbers, and I was feeling what's the question going to come to me. So thanks Manoj for the very pointed question, which brings the relevance into the entire subject. When we talk of multimodal logistics, either by choice or by compulsion, we need to have the hub and spoke to operate very efficiently. When we talk of the hub and spoke, then we need to have the logistics hubs. When we talk of logistic hub, it means warehousing. Warehousing, Tata BlueScope with its expertise over being the two giants involved, Tata Steel and BlueScope Steel of Australia, the product which we bring in has got a lot of relevance. Out of my 4 fellow speakers, 2 have touched upon sustainability. So sustainability is no more a buzzword. It is basically a way of life. So all the products are sustainable. It is certified, approved by IGBC Green Council. It is EPD certified. Further, as we talk of multimodal, we are there in all the modes of transportation, be it railways. I have already mentioned about the road transport wherein the logistics hubs. I have also talked about, when we talk of Sagarmala, then obviously the Sagarmala also, when it came in 2014, launched by our Honorable PM. So that point of time also there was a lot of development which took place in terms of warehousing, and we are an active part in that. Be it the Gati Shakti project, under which in the first phase, which is directly being monitored by the PMO, sorry, approximately 1,250 stations are coming up under redevelopment. We are present over there. Our products, apart from being sustainable, we can give peace of mind to the people to focus on their core, that is logistics. We can provide solutions in coastal areas where marine atmosphere corrosiveness is very high. The products can take care of those atmospheres, thus minimizing your any sort of maintenance activities and all. You can focus on your core. The Lizard brand, which brings in around 14 different types of profiles. It can have screwless systems, which can ensure absolutely a leak-proof roof. And when we talk of leak-proof, obviously then you have either perishable, non-perishable, and very important goods which are there in the warehouse, which can be, there can be peace of mind. The profiles can have very easy installation of solar panels. Solar panels means sustainability again. The product which we produce, the paints what we used are all lead-free. When we talk of a hub, it can have a very good water harvesting system. Our product can offer that. So this is how I find that we are very much relevant to the entire industry. And being the industry leaders present over here, they should obviously be giving an eye on that. And they are the policy makers and the decision makers of the industry. And we can play an active and a very effective role in the entire thing. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Goa, coming back to you, a few years ago, government introduced this direct port delivery and, even now direct, exports and all that. So how do you ensure that CFSs remain, relevant in today's, in a setup like that? And how do you provide value-added services so that it remains an important part of the supply chain?
Thank you, Manoj. A very relevant point. Let's just go back exactly 4.5 years back. 2020, COVID came in. Every time something happens in life, the wars come, this happens, but COVID was something unique. All the major ports in the world, the United States, the so-called developed nations, all the ports are fully clogged because the ships which unloaded the cargo, it remained in the port, there was no connectivity further. There were 30 to 40 ships waiting at Los Angeles anchorage, all 15 to 18 to 20,000 TEU vessels. So you can imagine 600,000 TEUs sitting in water for 40 days, 45, 50 days. India was only the country where all the essential supplies kept moving, because when the cargo came into the port, it needs to be evacuated. So like the ports, CFSs and ICDs ran round the clock. They provided support to every single stakeholder, accommodated them. They never allowed the ports to get congested. CFSs got congested. They worked on 110% capacity, 120% capacity. I have some friends here whose CFS, they got customs came forward and they gave space even, some additional spaces, some additional. So this was the first thing where the role of CFSs came in. Now, why India has CFSs and a lot of other countries don't have it? Let's look at JNPT. It was conceptualized on a CFS model and all other ports followed the same. The reason being, if you go to Hamburg or you go to any of these newer ports, your total port area could be 300 square kilometer, 400 square kilometer. Here you have, say, 50 square kilometer. So obviously, if there were no CFSs, the cargo, there would have been mountains of containers in the port, and containers, the operations, the waterside operations would have also come to a standstill. Like Dr. Hariharan mentioned, that delay in the evacuation, this happens only when there's a congestion. And recently also, let's take this Houthi war and the Suez Canal closure. Lots of ports, like Singapore was the most impacted. 20 days, 25 days, nothing would happen. The port was literally closed. But Indian ports, like say your PSA and your other DP World, they accommodated additional vessels. There was some congestion on the road. But the impact was that our supply line still continued. So You mentioned about 5 to 6 to 7 days waiting period or the dwell time. Normally the containers get evacuated, we get 2 days free to evacuate the CFSs. Our average is 28 to 29 hours, vis-a-vis 58 to 59 hours of DPD. That's the average. Why the containers stay for 5-6 days? Is the consignee wants to keep it as a storage yard because he does not have space either in his factory or his goods are so inexpensive, because 30 to 35% is our, heavy metal scrap, the steel and all the scraps, which the prices keep changing. He's imported goods at a certain time. It's a stock market, the price has gone down. He doesn't want to sell it. He leaves it in CFS. And he will perhaps abandon it and then buy it in auction later on. So these are the constraints which are happening. But India, I would say, has done reasonably well because of the CFSs in place. Now going forward, yes, we have to change. And what we have been telling government, and first time in the National Logistics Policy, they mentioned CFSs are now working at 50%, 55% capacity at a lot of places. They are bleeding. They have set up a huge infrastructure. Each CFS costs 300 to 400 crores. They're state-of-the-art infrastructure. We said, government is talking about creating additional infrastructure, warehouses. Give some flexibility to CFSs to do value-added services. The government has mandated in the National Logistics, first time the plan which was released on the 17th of September 2022. But there has not been much of encouragement because it's a customs, the government has to facilitate that, okay, these are CFSs, we want them to be utilized more. We gave a presentation on something known as Smart Yard, where everything through artificial intelligence and machine tools, the entire movement can be totally transparent. The coastal goods can be stored along with this. You have, with the imported goods, you can have cold storage, you can have everything present, and the CFSs, you don't have to have a 200 acres multi-logistics park. You have 50 acres, you have much smaller parks called CFSs as logistics park, not multimodal, because none of them, most of them do not have rail. And because they cater to 200. But all these value-added services like barcoding, aggregation, segregation, repackaging, smaller sizes. Today also most of the consignees want to use even the DPD cargo. Now JNPT has got almost 78% DPD. But 95% of these DPD cargoes flow through the CFSs because they find it better evacuation, better facilities for value addition. So we want government could recognize it and be a little more liberal, the customs and the government, so that these facilities, the high-class infra which is available, can be more effectively utilized. And instead of waiting for the new infra to come, which will take a couple of years, the existing infra can be well utilized. Thank you.
Right, that's fair enough. Mr. Bakshi, coming back to you, that second question that I asked you, 1.5 months ago, there was a huge hue and cry about, turning around containers, that was landing up in the hinterland and, to facilitate exports, and, there were a shortage of equipment and all that, and the government had to call a meeting. And, so how do you think that kind of a situation can be addressed? There were talk about, empty container yards. I mean, that's one of the ways of dealing with the situation. So what in your opinion can be done to ensure that, these import containers are turned around quickly for exports?
Yeah, so I think before we go down to the solution, let's break down the problem and understand it better. The problem of a shortage of export containers is erratic. It happens, let's say, 2-3 times a year, or maybe in good times, maybe once in a year. If we look at it very broadly, India's containerized imports is much higher than containerized exports. So, logically speaking, there should not be any shortages. But the problem is, this is a multi-dimensional problem. So, why it happens is, there is seasonality. There is volatility for cargoes like agri. Government sometimes allows agri export, sometimes they don't. And you get very little time or window to do it. So that time there is a scramble for boxes and nobody is prepared. There are variations, for example, what I would call as trade variation. So a lot of imports from Far East into India, and Far East carriers and not much exports. So Far East carriers, their model is bring in imports and take back the empty. So there are these variations. So it's a very multi-dimensional problem. It will, the point that I'm trying to make is it's going to stay. And there are only so many ways you can deal with it. If you were to ask for solutions, I think one of the solutions is that if carriers can maybe work together more on, let's say, I mean, I'm sure they do exchange boxes in a very structured manner. Can we do more of it? A carrier, let's say a Far East carrier bringing in a lot of imports into India, but not carrying them back as exports and repositioning, can they, let's say, if it is a leasing company box, can they give it to another carrier who needs the boxes? So those exchanges happen, but then can we do more of them? Triangulations or street runs. I was looking at the matchlog video some time back. So that I think is one of the most nagging and biggest inefficiency in the container shipping world. So every import box goes for destuffing, comes back to a yard, and then again goes back to for stuffing, maybe to that same customer or a customer who's next door to the importer. So if you can facilitate more of these triangulations, I'm sure shipping lines also are doing at their end, and then there are platforms which are specialized in this. But even today, the way I see it, the penetration is very low. So it is not just a means of turning around the boxes faster, but it also reduces your cost. So that can be done. We were talking about railway costs. So railway costs, I think, also are another factor. So today, the empty container freight is roughly 55% of a laden, let's say, freight, which is very high. So that's the reason a lot of empty containers actually move by road. The repositioning happens by road under cabotage. So you have road operators who stuff some cargo into it and then give it to the shipping company at the desired location at a lower cost. But when times are such that you need the boxes fast, then shipping companies don't have, or you need to move a lot of boxes, then you can't do it by road alone. Then you need rail. But the rail, the pricing is a concern. So pricing is very high. So can the railways do something about it? We very often hear, and you were talking about this ministry meetings, there they come and announce something which is like a knee-jerk reaction. It doesn't really work well. So can you do something structurally about this empty cost on rail? Then that I think will help facilitate faster and more evacuation. So I think these are some of the points that I can think of.
Again, there is going to be a massive realignment in, liner consortium arrangements that's going to happen soon, next February or something. Maersk is aligning with Hapag-Lloyd and all that. How is it going to affect India, and are the ports prepared for that kind of a realignment, amongst shipping lines?
So it's largely the collaboration, and what we are promising is that schedule reliability is the one which is hitting as of now. We used to be number one, and it has been considerably dropped. It is going to be work on network of network. What it means, like hub and spoke, everyone has talked about. So it will be in similar sort of setup where feeders will be connecting, and these vessels will be calling at the hubs. And so that you can have maximum or all optimal uses of the vessels also, which is not happening. And on the key routes, you are collaborating whoever the cargo has.
Everybody is now talking about end-to-end logistics, right? Shipping lines are getting into end-to-end logistics. port, terminals are getting into end-to-end logic. How is it going to, impact a standalone ICD or a CFS operator? I mean, eventually at the end of the day, you'll also have to align with somebody. So, is it the end of the road for, independent ICD or CFS operators? I mean, will they find it difficult to survive in a situation like everybody is doing end-to-end?
See, my own call is that as long as the service levels are good, even a shipping line, in terms of aligning, they have to align with an ICD because we have the transport. They have the entire thing on carrier haulage, but the rail haulage is done by our trains. The transport is done by our trucks, our fleets. So it's not that, there is a sea change. It's the billing. The billing goes to the shipping line. But the point is, the supply chain will be as reliable as the service you can provide. So as long as you can keep providing good service, I don't think it will have a major impact, because at the end of the day, the entire fleet is not with the shipping lines, the trucking fleet. The trucking fleet is outsourced, whether it be outsourced from other transporters or whether it be outsourced from the ICDs. So that's point number one. Number two is, I have a feeling that as competition toughens, I think even operators like us will have to share facilities. I mean, you can't do it all alone. It's not like, sab kaam hum hi kar lenge. No. The banks have learned it the hard way. They are sharing ATMs. They think that it makes a lot of sense. I can give you an example of Thailand. The sugar factories, Mitrapol, one of the biggest sugar factories in Thailand, has a crushing capacity of 26,000 tons per day of sugar cane. They have created an eco atmosphere where there is an ice cream factory, there is a cold drink factory, there is another cold drink manufacturer, and they supply liquid sugar. You see the amount of cost they save? By not making it into granules, they supply the sugar through a pipeline, the investment is shared, they have long-term contracts. I think this is what the industry has to do. You have to learn to share. I may have been critical earlier in my speech, but I think there is a lot of light at the end of the tunnel. The government is doing a lot on its part. There is the DFCC corridor, there is the Sagarmala project, the customs, there is a sea change in customs. You can sit at home and file a bill of entry, file a shipping bill. All these things were unheard of. There is a lot of custom examination which has been done away with. So I may have been critical on some policies, but at the same time, India is like an elephant. It's going to take time for India to move. It cannot have the rapid arm of a communist or a totalitarian regime where, Jameen le lo. I mean, China, overnight your land is taken away, your houses are taken away. I don't think we can do it in a democracy like India. So things have to wait. We have to be a little more patient. But at the end of the day, the strength of rail over long distance is undeniable.
Sorry, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I'll add what you have asked and also what Mr. Naveen has said. So it's a game of collaboration in simple words. No, in the same ecosystem, everyone will coexist. Neither transporter is going away, nor terminal, nor shipping line, nor your rail operator. And without anyone, others will not work. Unless it will not be collaboration, no one will shine also. So a lot of interdependencies are there and will continue to be there.
It's going to be an era of collaborations that's going to happen now. Given the
it has already started, like you are talking about DFC 360 tubes at one go. Which ICD will have 720 tubes at one go to run, unless 2-3 will not collaborate. So it's an era of collaboration, and that is what it is going to happen in future for sure.
So, Dr. Hariharan, I was asking about the startups and all that. So you were saying, so we have something called Portal, right? Robert Saab, I mean, you know about it. I mean, Portal. Portal is something that was set up by the government. You've ever experienced, what is your experience of, doing or transacting on, going onto the Portal platform?
It's user friendly, but the point is for how many people. the point is for people like us where we are striving towards growth, it's an easy platform for you to communicate. But for my customer, where I get business from, when I tell him to use it, it's quite difficult for him. The understanding, the skill level that is required for basic things, right? So they don't get that thing very clearly. But for me, it is easy. For me, it is a one-way thing where I get end-to-end information, right? How do I transact? Where is it? What is it, right? But from a customer-centric point of view, I think so. How do you scale it at a larger level? What is the reach end-to-end is, I think, so something that we have to work on.
Or is there any, are people skeptical about, giving information on the portal platform? Everybody have got their own way of dealing with businesses and all that. So is there some mindset that, people is finding it difficult to divulge a lot of information?
Yes, Manoj, it is. One is that there's a mindset that because the data is the king. And everybody, let's put it this way, let's go on the history of portal or port community system. That is something we have miserably failed over the years. We got one of the best systems from Singapore. Other places what they call is a cargo community system, not only the port community system. So every stakeholder, like freight forwarder with end customer, the user, everybody is on that platform. We had this from Crimson Logistics, Singapore, who are still using it. They had so many upgrades. It was taken by Government of India. They did not pay the subscription. Ultimately, they had to terminate the contract. 2015-16, it was decided to set up a PCS 1.5, an upgraded version. It worked for 3-4 years, and what they asked most of the industry, that you latch on. But still the customs, or they will not give access to all the stakeholders. It doesn't serve the purpose. Like take a case of container freight station, unless you have out of charge or LEO or the delivery order, how is it going to work for you? So they created APIs with the hope everyone spent money. It didn't happen. Then the government decided to, close it midway and go in for National Logistics Portal for marine first. It's being done by the same vendor. The concerns of the industry are same, that he has the data, because he also is a competitor to most of them who are sitting on the dais or off the dais. So that is a big concern. But now you should ask me how the other countries are doing. Every port in the world, say take Rotterdam or Singapore or something, they have a system. And there's no individual company who is operating a logistics firm or a shipping line, or they own that. And everybody is hooked on the data. What is required by X, Y, or Z, to that extent it needs to be shared. And it is shared. And it's no rocket science. We are passing on this to the entire world. And we cannot do it in our country. I think this National Logistic Portal which had come, it is a giant like TCS or Wipro or somebody who could have driven it and could have delivered it by now. Right now, what is the system? Latch on. Anything can latch on to this. I do not know what will be the success. I wish it good luck. I wish it happens. But I have my little bit of reservations.
You want to add
Just
something,
you spoke about Crimson Logic, which is a PSA company.
Yeah.
So they also do most of the stamp paper that we buy across India is also managed by them. After that Telegi scam, Government of India reached out and Crimson Logic actually helped them do this. So the most important thing is how secure is your platform and how secure is your data. So that is what we were delivering. So that I think is the moot point.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to add one thing. What Umesh sir just mentioned, data. For anyone, that is the epicenter. How much do you digress? How much do you utilize it? And the biggest challenge in India, I think so, people still do not know how do you utilize data for what benefit. How do you save cost? What is the efficiency that you can bring in? That is also one of the reason, like Naveen sir just mentioned, you are the elephant in the room, basically. You know the problem, there is a solution, but adoption is a big challenge. People do not know how do you use it. So I think so a common platform or a place like other countries are using it, everyone on a single platform, everyone uses the same channel, becomes easier for everyone to progress together. So that's something I think so we have to work. We have done it, but the ground execution and implementation is way far behind than what we think.
Now let me throw open the floor for the audience to ask the esteemed panelists anything that they would like to know about. Please come forward. It's an open. Come on. I think a lot of people sitting here whom obviously you will be having some doubts that you can get clarified with all these people. Don't feel shy. No one? Anyway, so thanks gentlemen for such an enlightening discussion on various aspects about infrastructure and multimodal connectivity. It was a pleasure hearing you talk about several things, and the takeaway is that, as Gyan said and you said, I think it's an era of collaboration. So on that note, we'll wrap up this discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. May I request gentlemen to kindly be seated on the dais. We do have some more ceremonies left. Thank you so much. Let's give them a loud round of applause. That was the first session of today's event. And this is a first because of all the events of India C-Trade that I've done, this is the first time that we've not had one question from the audience towards the panel. Otherwise, we do not have a dearth of questions. The moment the floor is open for questions, there are so many questions, and I have to intervene and say, in the interest of time, let's stop. So do you have any questions now, gentlemen and ladies?
You can even ask the most, stupid of questions. You
Absolutely.
don't have to worry about anything.
Yes, we have somebody there ready with a question. Go ahead, sir. The mic isn't working? Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Sir, I just pointed out that during COVID, CAPS industry has worked very well yeah? Okay, sir, I just highlighted that during COVID times, the CAPS industry has really worked hard to decongest the ports. I represent Central Warehousing Corporation, and I was manager of one of those CAPS, which was nominated to decongest the port. It is CAPS Dunagiri node. And I know how hard we have worked during CAPS times. So the question which I got for you is that recently the JNPT came with a circular stating that the empty containers are actually charging low charges to all these empties which are brought into port. I think that is adding too much cost to exporters when they take back the empty containers. So I just want to know you, I want to ask you one thing, that what can be done in that aspect so that helps our industry to go and sustain as far as cost is concerned?
Thank you. I think on this empty yard, it's a very tricky question, and it was the most unorganized sector because they don't come under any jurisdiction of any they're not monitored by the government or anybody. There was cash money which was transactions were going on. It would be the transporters or the depot or whatever it was. What JNPT did, or what Mundra did that before, in fact before that, they formed an association and all of them got disciplined. Overnight, more than 54 empty depots, they all decided that they will issue the invoices, GST invoices. That was the first victory. Second thing is, if there are 50, 60, they have their own difficulties, and all these yards are required. To have one empty yard towards a port cluster will congest the port further. It has to be like, what are the CFSs? You have, supposing 35 CFSs in JNPT or 35 in Chennai or in Mundra, 14 of them. They move into 4 or 5 different clusters. The idea is that you don't congest one cluster. Similarly, these empty container depots are spread all across. There's some transparency required. The talks are going on. And the shipping lines, since they ask that container has to go back to a particular depot, they'll have to ensure that the tariffs are also known to the persons. And there are reasons why there's a difference in charges, because a container has to come back by a certain day. If it doesn't come, the next day the line detention charges come. If there's a damage to the container, that is. So these are the few difficult things. They'll have to engage more surveyors. But I feel in another 6 months to 1 year time, this empty storage will get totally structured. It's at the nascent stage now. The first step has been taken. And they're trying to even work out that you have similar system all over India, but it doesn't work. Because each port, each area has got different systems.
I think, CMA has already, got into an arrangement with one of the empty container yards in Mundra. So I think, as you said, it's going to be streamlined now, maybe.
Yeah,
because,
it is definitely going to be streamlined. I think it's a very welcome move taken by the JNPT. And it has got right now who should collect the charges. There's one point is that shipping line should collect the charges and then they pay to the empty depot owners. They say, why? Tomorrow they'll tell shipping lines or the freight forwarders divert cargo to CFSs. So they should collect our charges and pay to the CFSs. So we'll have a cash flow problem. So the system has to go on the way it's working. It needs to be streamlined, structured, and which is happening, which is a good thing.
Great. Thank you, sir. Hope that answered your question. Any other questions from anyone from the audience?
I'll also ask question to Mr. Sri Hariharan. You said that the skilled manpower, as per the logistic industry is concerned, and you compared it with e-commerce players. We understand the technology is backbone of e-commerce players. Don't you think our industry has lagged behind to motivate people who are working on ground to use technology? And don't you think that something can be done about it? Because finally, somewhere down the line, we'll have to come and get adapted with technology coming.
Before the session started, I got a couple of photos and images from one of our clients in Canada. Okay, so the consignment had footprints of, it was on top of the consignment, right? There were footprints. So he categorically took photos and sent it to us, whereas it was a fragile good, a semi-fragile good, you can say. So now this is where I was telling, skilled manpower. How do you train people? Okay, and that is where technology also comes in. Okay, so there are two aspects to this. One is definitely manpower. The other point is technology. Today we are heavily dependent on skilled manpower to use cranes, machineries inside, whereas half of the world right now is digitally using it. There is no manpower in your CFS in a lot of places. Your stacking is done digitally. Optimum utilization is there. Your India is at a level where we have got manpower to such a scale where dependency on technology can be reduced. But we are not able to do it because it is still an unorganized market. There are multiple players who really want to grow, but either they don't have finances or there is some or the other constraint for them to grow. Okay, or the support is not there. They don't see that they can grow in this digital space, or they see that the only space that they can grow is logistics, not the manpower space that they can grow. So if I see there are no initiatives also, or there are very less initiatives where trained manpower is given to shipping industries to operate the CFSs also, if you see, that is not there. That is there in the e-commerce segment. Today I see there are Niti Aayog. We have hired a lot of people from Niti Aayog to operate in warehousing spaces, but we are not able to do it in our industry. So that is a problem that we have to focus on. That is where your manpower is required. That is where efficiency and cost comes down drastically, is what we have to focus on.
We were in a conference in Delhi between NSCFS and CFSAI, and there was a presentation by Logistics Skill Council. It was amazing to see what has been done in the last 2 to 3 years. They have trained some 55,000 people and all possible courses. They have trained drivers, which is one of the biggest shortage drivers. And not only they are so good, they are being employed in European Union. And 2,200 drivers have been sent to European Union. So this is what they are trying to attract people in the logistics sector. Today, nobody takes it as a course in the university or something. Now, IIM Mumbai has got a course on the logistics, and it's been done with a company of master mariners, and they have joined hands. Triple FAI has got an institute where they're training people in all over India. So training has picked up in a reasonably good way, and I think in one of the MERS, one of our colleagues from the CFS, he mentioned that about the gender equality, they've got a new warehouse where they got all 100 women drivers, and more than 50% of the staff is women. So this is where, not only this, we also got to get this gender equality coming in, because that's a theme of World Customs Organization as well as CBIC for this year. So, but with this, yes, technology 101%, and I think next session is totally on technology, and we should all hear that how much has come into technology, and what changes it is, what drastic changes it's doing to us. Transparency is coming, and that is what is needed. The moment the transparency comes, the costs will come down. And logistics cost, we keep saying India's logistics cost is high, 12%, 13%. Last year, one of the government analysts itself showed our cost is less than 9%. We keep harping, we keep telling ourselves the whole of the world thinks that our costs are high. No, we are better off. And we have improved.
That is because, Mr. Grover, we have to keep it at the higher level so that, there's scope for improvement.
Just one point on this logistic cost. So one is the estimates. The second, I think, is a very intuitive thing. See, India is a continent-sized country. You have production centers and consumption yeah, I mean, they are 1,000 kilometers apart. So logistics cost will have to be high. This is what I think of.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. So overall, it looks like a promising future. And yes, all we need to know about technological sustainability, etc., coming up in the next session. And I'm sure that's something we are all looking forward to. I hope there are any further questions. If that's, yes, you have a question. Yes, please come forward.
Although I don't have a question, but as an exporter, I have some concerns regarding export from Mundra port. That first of all, we are talking about infrastructure. So right now, the roads leading to various CFS around Mundra, they are in very bad shape, because in this rainy season, we faced a lot of difficulties while picking up the empty containers from the various CFSs. So the roads need to be improved and developed, which are leading to in and around Mundra, number one. Number two, it's the time for Mundra Customs to at least start clearance in at least 2 shifts, because they are working only in just general shift as compared to JNPT. JNPT is working round the clock, 24/7. And Mundra port, they are working only in 1 shift. And various times the container is gated in the night hours, and then it is the Leo, it doesn't happen. And then we are not able to hand over the shipping bill to the line. So it's time, as we are moving and the volumes are growing. So customs also need to gear it up, I think so.
That's a good point, okay?
Yeah.
That we can take it, to the relevant people.
Yeah, actually customs have been also, they have also short of manpower. And that's why they have done so much of digitization now. I think the amount of digitization done by customs is mind-boggling. More than we are talking about technology, they have used the technology to it. Their only problem right now is that their, that ice skate, that needs a bigger platform, which is being revamped totally. But I think, see what you mentioned, these issues do come up at Bombay also, that LEO is not there, custom officer is not there. But by and large, it is, I think, going well. And till this happens, my advice to exporters would be, try and finish and get it done by 4:30 or 5 o'clock. So your shipment doesn't miss out.
No, but
till then. Yeah.
But I think as the volume is growing at Mundra, it's time for customs also to gear up and
absolutely.
Start the work in 2 shifts at least.
Absolutely, because Mundra is now overtaken JNP, they're far ahead.
Yeah.
And it's likely to keep going.
Yeah.
Of course, with the PSA terminal coming in next year, we'll be at 10.2 million capacity in JNP. And why JNP has slightly fallen back is because Mundra had the advantage of DFC getting cleared first. So it's a setback for JNP, but doesn't matter. It's a country which has to progress, whether it goes through Mundra or it goes from JNP. Ultimately, the country's logistics cost has to come down and has to be let it be any port. That would allow.
Unless the customs officer is available, we cannot have the LEO. So that's the problem we are facing.
I'm in touch with CBIC. I will make sure that your concern, not only through this forum, through India Sea Trade, but we will take it up also.
Thank
sure,
you.
we'll do that, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. Let's give them a loud round of applause. That was session 1 on infrastructure development and multimodal connectivity. Thank you for sharing your thoughts, and any further questions can be taken over to you. And please be assured that we have an India Sea Trade member who is taking note of such concerns and other relevant points discussed here, and will be informing the authorities about it and make sure that solutions will be rolled out. So thank you so much for your involvement in the session. Now, as a token of gratitude to our panelists on stage, I'd like to invite someone, Mr. Vishal Parkala, who is the Vice President of MPRS Shipping and Logistics Private Limited, is here with us today. I'd like to invite him on stage to present a memento as a token of our gratitude to our panelists on stage. Welcome, sir. Can I hear a loud round of applause for him on stage? Thank you so much. As I call out the name, may I request the panelists to come forward. Mr. Naveen Chaudhary, Executive Vice President, Operations, the Thar Dry Port. Thank you, sir, for joining us today and for sharing your insights with us. I'd like to invite Mr. Gyan Abhishek, Head, Intermodal Operations South Asia, Maersk Line India Private Limited, to kindly step forward and accept the memento from India Sea Trade. Thank you for joining us, sir. Mr. Ranadeep Banerjee, AGM BP Infra, Tata Blue Scope Steel Private Limited. Welcome, sir. May I invite you to receive the memento. Thank you so much for joining us. May I now invite Mr. Umesh Grover, Secretary General, Container Freight Station Association of India. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. Can we hear it for him, please? He has around 52 years of experience, probably one of the senior most people on the panel here today. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. May I now request Mr. Sunil Bakshi, Associate Director, PSA India, to receive a memento on behalf of India's Sea Trade. Thank you, sir, for joining us. And now over to Dr. Hariharan Bottepalli, Deputy General Manager, Navio Shipping Private Limited. Thank you for joining us, sir. And now, ladies and gentlemen, let's hear a loud round of applause for Mr. P. Manoj, Editor, ET Infra, who was here today as the moderator and has done an absolutely brilliant job of moderating the discussions on time. Thank you so much, sir. Sir, before you leave, may I request you to please pose for a photograph with our panelists on stage. By India Sea Trade. Thank you, gentlemen. May I request you to kindly join our audience now. On that note, let's take a quick tea, coffee, refreshment break. I request all of you to kindly come back exactly by 5 p.m. because we will be beginning our next session at 5 p.m. on the dot. Thank you so much. I'll see you on the other side of a 30-minute break. Thank you.